Good morning. You are tuning in to the Stylo News Intelligence Update for July 30th, 2026. I'm your host, and today we are looking at the Africa Situation Report. We'll be taking a calm, objective look at key security dynamics and structural threats across the continent. Let's get right to the facts. Before we begin, this morning's briefing is brought to you by ProWave AI, the developer behind Stylo Intel. That's the AI-powered open-source intelligence program that brings you today's situational report. You can also access their commercial version, Stylo News, on the web and through mobile apps for on-demand intelligence.
Here is our agenda for today. We'll be covering primary events and impacts across 4 key regions: Central Africa, East Africa, North Africa, and West Africa. We will then wrap things up with a strategic forecast.
Starting off with Central Africa, where we are tracking ongoing insurgency operations alongside a developing health crisis. Taking a look at the regional threat map, you'll see our structural threat indicators are heavily concentrated right in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. This instability naturally extends toward the borders of Rwanda and Uganda, making this borderland the undeniable epicenter of tension in the region.
The situation here is incredibly complex. Right now, the M23 insurgency is maintaining territorial control in the eastern DRC. With the Doha negotiations currently assessed as stalled over sovereignty disputes, any near-term de-escalation seems quite unlikely. Compounding this security issue is a severe health emergency. Islamic State-associated ADF militants are actively disrupting operations meant to contain a serious Ebola outbreak. It's a dual crisis that could very well spill over into neighboring Uganda. At the same time, the FDLR armed group remains at the very center of the ongoing diplomatic standoff between the DRC and Rwanda.
When we look at the decision-makers, they are facing starkly polarized realities. Pro-Rwanda voices prioritize neutralizing the FDLR, seeing their presence in the DRC as a fundamental security threat that justifies defensive action. On the other side, pro-DRC voices frame M23 not as a localized insurgency, but as a proxy force actively occupying Congolese territory. Understanding these two entrenched perspectives really helps explain the current diplomatic gridlock. Moving on to East Africa, we're looking at operations in Somalia and the broader challenges of state fragility.
As illustrated here, intelligence points to significant operational activity concentrated in central and southern Somalia. We're specifically watching the Hiran region and further south down into Middle Juba. Here is what we're seeing on the ground. Al-Shabaab continues to demonstrate geographic resilience, holding on to established sanctuaries in those central and southern regions, but they are facing serious pushback. The elite Somali National Army Gorgor forces, backed by airstrikes, are executing aggressive clearing operations against militant bunkers. Now, while the threat to U.S. regional interests stays elevated, we aren't tracking any imminent time-sensitive warnings today. What is concerning, however, are uncorroborated reports suggesting potential cooperation between Al-Shabaab and Houthi networks. If true, that could drastically alter regional logistics and weapon access.
Monitoring public sentiment gives us a glimpse into a very conflicted Somali public. There is certainly some cautious optimism regarding these tactical gains by security forces, but that optimism is heavily offset by sustained frustration over institutional dysfunction and corruption. Ultimately, while the government is proving it can execute offensive raids, the underlying state fragility remains a structural barrier to long-term stability.
Turning our attention to North Africa now, focusing on trans-regional networks and civil unrest.
The vast expanses of southern Libya operate as a highly porous, vital corridor. This area facilitates hybrid trafficking and connects militant networks stretching from the Sahel directly to the Mediterranean basin.
Currently, Libya is functioning as a support hub, a transit route, and a massive weapons reservoir drawing from post-2011 stockpiles. We're seeing JNIM-linked Sahel networks intersecting directly with southern Libya to sustain their operations. While there have been no confirmed major terrorist attacks inside North Africa proper in the last 24 hours, extremist actors, including ISIS remnants, are definitively using this territory for concealment and to move logistics to insurgencies further south. Internally, Libya's stability remains precarious. Protests are intensifying in western Libya, largely driven by prolonged power outages, and they feature active calls for the removal of Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeibeh. This civil unrest is a critical metric for us to watch because it dramatically increases the risk of opportunistic militia exploitation and potential clashes around state facilities in Tripoli.
Our final regional focus is West Africa, where we are tracking expanding militant threats.
Threat indicators here are dense and widespread. We are keeping a close watch on the highly volatile corridors spanning Mali, Niger, and Nigeria, where multiple heavily armed threat actors are operating across these borders.
The al-Qaeda-aligned JNIMM coalition remains the undeniably dominant insurgent actor in Mali. In just the past 24 hours, they've clashed near Niono with Malian state forces and elements of Russia's Africa Corps. This expansive reach is primarily funded by illicit gold smuggling across the region. At the same time, over in Nigeria, Boko Haram and ISWPA continue to execute rural mass casualty events. These attacks consistently outpace local response mechanisms, which is severely eroding public confidence.
The international response to this theater is deeply fractured right now. On one hand, Niger's junta is actively amplifying anti-Western narratives, publicly accusing France and the EU of funding Sahel terrorism. On the other hand, reports indicate the U.S. is weighing military action in Mali, signaling Washington's assessment that partner forces are currently struggling to contain JNIM's rapid expansion.
Finally, let's wrap up with our strategic forecast and a look at near-term threat indicators.
Here are the converging events you should be watching. Immediately, the expanding Ebola outbreak in the DRC is going to compound regional health and security as violence continues to hamper the medical response. In the short term, a funding crisis for the African Union mission in Somalia could reduce the pressure on al-Shabaab, which risks reversing recent tactical gains. Looking to the midterm, that civil unrest in western Libya carries a high risk of escalating into armed clashes. And on an ongoing basis, any potential U.S. military strikes in Mali would drastically impact the diplomatic and security posture across the entire Sahel.
That concludes today's objective look at the African security landscape. To dive deeper into this analysis, we highly recommend you listen to the full Stylo News Intel Update audio explainer, which analyzes 2 weeks of events in these specific regions. You can find it on your favorite channel or by following the link provided in this post. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe for continuous AI-powered news on demand at stylonews.com. Before we sign off, consider this. With state fragility acting as an accelerant across all 4 of these regions, how long until these localized crises merge into a single, uncontainable continental threat? Stay informed and have a great day.